Welcome to another exciting episode of Inner Peace Better Health. I'm your host, Saima, and today we have an extraordinary guest whose journey embodies resilience, leadership, and deep spiritual transformation. Joining us is David Richards, a former Marine Corps officer with 15 years of service, a corporate leader in customer experience at Cisco, and a sought after executive coach specializing in executive presence and transformational leadership. David has guided senior leaders at some of the world's largest financial and IT companies, including Microsoft and Cisco, helping them elevate their leadership and communication impact at the highest levels. But David's mission extends far beyond the boardroom. As a hashtag #1 international best-selling author, he helps people awaken the divine identity and step fully into the faith-driven purpose. With a unique blend of biblical wisdom, neuroscience, and practical leadership strategies, David is here to challenge the way we think about success, faith, and personal transformation. And today we will be diving into the fascinating topic of finding inner peace by rewiring the nervous system. So, David, welcome to the show.
Simon, thank you so much for having me. What a great introduction.
Thank you. Let's start with the basics. So, how does the nervous system influence our ability to find inner peace?
Yeah, so much like if I was a professional basketball player and I practice 5 hours a day, I'm going to develop in my nervous system the muscle memory to shoot baskets. So I just, if you look at professional basketball players, they can shoot a basket from anywhere on the court. And some of them don't even look after the ball leaves their hands because they know it's going to go in. It's that level of muscle memory through hardwiring their nervous system through repetition that they develop that level of success. The same thing can apply to us when it comes to inner peace, faith, resilience, whatever the case may be, through the power of incantations. Because whatever we create is created through our words. Our words shape our experience of life, and the words we say become our experience of an event. So if we're not mindful of that, we can just kind of react spontaneously off the cuff, unconsciously, and either talk to ourselves in a negative state or talk to other people in a negative state. And those things become the fabric of our reality. What we say is what we perceive in the world around us. So if I want to create inner peace or inner strength or inner calm or resilience, I can use the power of incantations. And what an incantation is and how it differs from an affirmation. If I say, I am incredibly smart, it's a nice statement. It doesn't have any resonance to it because there's no emotional intensity behind it. If, on the other hand, I say, I am incredibly smart, now I've got some emotional intensity. That emotion is going to have an effect on my nervous system. And I am somewhere in my physiology, in my nervous system, there is a neuron firing between two synapses. This neural pathway is being created that says I'm incredibly smart. And the more I say that to myself with more intensity, the stronger that neural pathway is going to become. And after a while, I no longer have to say it to myself because it's just who I am.
So, can you share a personal experience or client story that illustrates the impact of nervous system regulation on achieving inner peace?
Oh, absolutely. I have been for the past 3 or 4 years, I have been part of the Tony Robbins community. If you don't know who Tony Robbins is, he's a very successful entrepreneur and businessman who has helped millions of people around the world improve their lives. He's fed billions of people. I think it's up to 30 billion people now across the planet. And he's a really passionate soul. And through being in his programs and being in his world, you start to realize the power of incantations. And so one of the things that I've done personally has just been look to see the divine in everyone. And so in various forms, I will say an incantation to the effect that I see, the love and light of God in everyone. I see the love and light of God in everyone. I see the love and light of God in everyone. And after a while, I don't have to think it. It just happens. It's just natural. It's intuitive within me that every person I see is a divine being waiting to discover their own divinity. And when we see each other from that place, we can break down the limiting beliefs of dogma or culture or social background or economic status. And so I practice on a daily basis. I do incantations. I have a little trampoline in my office, and I do incantations for 10 minutes a day. And I just bring these things into my nervous system So I don't have to think about it anymore. It just becomes part of who I am.
It's really amazing that how our nervous system plays such a crucial role in our overall well-being, and understanding this connection can truly transform our approach to inner peace. Now, your work blends biblical wisdom with neuroscience. So, how did these two seemingly different fields complement each other in the context of rewiring the nervous system?
What a great question. So when we look at, without going too far deep into biblical text, the whole premise of the biblical corpus is that we are to awaken to the divine within. And if you look at the Old Testament, it's really the story of separation from creation. Like God is separate from creation. That's why he appears in the burning bush, or he appears in a thunder cloud, or a cloud. And there's a veil when he's in the holy of holies in the temple. There's a veil because mankind isn't ready for direct union. Then when Christ appears, now there's the indwelling of God on the earth. And what comes from that is the idea that I am, the phrase I am, is a part of the divine logos, the divine identity. And we all can say I am. And so what you say I am after becomes part of your identity. So if you say, even if you say it unconsciously, especially if you say it unconsciously, if you say, oh, I am no good at math, or, oh, I am not good at losing weight, whatever those things you say after the phrase I am are going to become your reality. So the idea is use that power, use the power of your voice, use the emotional intensity within you to create I am statements that are uplifting, that are inspiring, that draw out the best of you. So if I say I am courage, or I am brave, or I am genius, or I am wealthy, or I am abundant, and I say that to myself over and over again, I am creating those neural pathways in my mind. And let's talk about what that really means. So there are kind of two sections to the mind, right? If you think of an iceberg in the water, what you see on the surface is really what we would consider the conscious mind. The conscious mind is where 10% of our bodily and mental functions take place. It's the world of the senses, right? So we take in the outside world through our five senses, what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we touch. All those things are how we interact with the physical world. Underneath the water, that's the rest. That's where the real big, bulky part of the iceberg is. That's the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is where 90% of our mental and bodily functions take place. That's where our habits form. That's where our emotions reside. That's where our long-term memory is. What happens is we develop beliefs, and if we're not conscious to those beliefs, we can program our subconscious mind to create a reality that's not beneficial for us. And what's different and unique about the subconscious mind is it takes everything you say as true. There's no filter. The only distinction is it does not take into consideration negative statements. So in other words, if I say, I don't want to be broke, and I keep saying that to myself over and over again, the only thing the subconscious mind hears is, I want to be broke. And so that's the pattern that I create then through consistently telling myself that over and over again. So once you understand how the mind works, you realize it is really powerful. And what I feed my mind matters. The thoughts that I create and think in my head matter. So in order for me to have a more fulfilling life, in order for me to have a powerful view and a powerful physiology, I need to have I am statements that are supporting me, uplifting me, and inspiring other people. And as I tell myself those same incantations over and over again, those same powerful statements over and over again, I am hardwiring those into my subconscious, which creates that neurology into my nervous system. And it just becomes part of my identity. I don't have to think about being wealthy because I just am wealthy. I don't have to think about being genius. I am just genius. I think about those things enough and I repeat those things enough. And that's just part of my identity.
That's noteworthy. Can you share some principle, like some specific practical techniques that you recommend for integrating these principles into daily life?
Absolutely. I first started this journey probably around 2017 or 2018. I remember, and I didn't understand. I say I started this because I didn't fully understand the power of emotion. And so I found a YouTube video, and I remember I would be driving from work, and it would be this guy just talking, saying these I am statements over and over again. And he wanted you to repeat them. And so I would repeat them. And it would be, I am wealthy. I am abundant. I am genius. I am extraordinary. And there was nothing wrong with that, but there was no emotion. It was really affirmations. And as I got into the Tony Robbins world, I start to realize when we bring positive emotion and intensity, it actually releases chemicals in our body that accelerate the hardwiring of that nervous system. And so I switched from just these affirmations without emotion to starting to say incantations. And whenever I go to a Tony Robbins event now, I say them with emotional intensity. He has a lot of movement and energy and dancing in his events. And it's not just because it's all fluff, it's because through the release of all the chemicals and hormones into your body, through that energy creation, you are creating these new neural pathways. At the same time, you're changing your physiology, changing your psychology. So how I've really started to implement that is it's really easy. I do, as I said earlier, I do 10 minutes or more in the morning on this little trampoline inside my office, and I just jump up and down and I say my incantations. And then the thing that's really transformed is whenever I go driving in my car, I will scream my incantations at the top of my lungs because I know that emotional intensity is further baking those beliefs and values into my nervous system. And so I'm not worried about I don't do it with the windows down, but I'll just drive, and if I have like a 20-minute drive, I will spend those 20 minutes shouting as loud as I can all my incantations because I know as I change my nervous system, I'm changing my experience of life.
It's really fascinating to see that how ancient wisdom and modern science can come together to create, such powerful tools for personal transformation. Now, you have worked with leaders at some of the world's largest companies. So, how do you help them apply these principles of nervous system regulation in high pressure environments?
A lot of it is I still promote the idea of incantations, and some of my clients have taken me up on that, and some of them feel like it's a little weird because it's unorthodox. The other thing I do is something called NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and it's an offshoot kind of the incantation idea, but it's the idea that if you can control your thoughts, then you can control your emotions. And much like if we have a scary experience, say you have when you were little, you were afraid of snakes because you saw a snake and it scared you one time, and you've had this fear ever since. The whole process or the idea behind NLP is if you learn to fear quickly, you can unlearn it just as quickly. You don't have to go to years of therapy or years of psychology and seeing a therapist to do this. It's just breaking that pattern within your head where you think of snake and it triggers this fear to now coming up with a different pattern. And as you come up with that different pattern, you can have a different experience when you see a snake. So what I teach my clients is there are lots of different techniques in NLP. One of the most easiest to explain is something called anchoring. And when I teach anchoring to my clients, I say, okay, if they want confidence when they're going into an executive meeting or meeting in the C-suite, I deal with a lot of senior directors and vice presidents, then I will ask them to close their eyes and think back to a time when they felt extremely confident, like they were just the most confident in their business, in life. They're just on top of the world. And I ask them to measure that feeling, that level of intensity on a scale of 1 to 10. And when they get it up to a 10, I say, okay, now just really feel it in all your body. What do you see? What do you hear in that moment? Take yourself back to that moment. And as the intensity of that emotion reaches a peak, I ask them to squeeze their thumb and forefinger together because they're creating that anchor. And we'll do this several times. So get to that emotional intensity where they feel that emotion of confidence so intensely. And I have them squeeze their thumb and forefinger together. Do it again, do it again. And then we'll kind of shake them up a little bit, disrupt their pattern, open their eyes. And I'll say, okay, now squeeze your thumb and forefinger together. Do you feel that emotion of confidence coming back to you? And if they feel it right away, then we're good. If they still feel like, oh, it's only a 7 instead of a 10, we'll reset that anchor over and over again until it's really sticking so that on a moment's notice, they can pull that level of intensity and level of confidence into their body just by tapping their thumb and forefinger together.
It is going to surely be beneficial for all our listeners. Can you share a success story where a leader was able to transform their approach and find greater inner peace through your guidance?
Absolutely. I had a woman who was one of my clients who works for a huge industry company that does sustainability efforts. And she found she was struggling because she had a boss who would support her a lot, but also knew how to kind of pull her chain. And so she realized that she had always kind of developed this need for validation from her boss. And as we started to really get into her kind of understanding how she thought about things, because really NLP and even coaching is just an exploration is somehow how someone thinks and then how to improve their thinking. I realized and we discovered really that she was not bringing her whole self to work. So she meditated and she did yoga in her personal life, and that was not part of her professional life. And what happens for a lot of people is we split ourselves in two. There's who we are away from work, and then there's who we are we show up at work. And we often feel like, well, I can't bring all of myself to work. And it's not that you need to go around namasteing people because you're a yoga teacher or because you love yoga, but there's nothing wrong with that. Bring that part of you into the job. And so as she discovered through her own kind of revelations that it was okay for her to bring her whole self to work, everything shifted. Her boss ended up leaving. She got a new boss. She started to see that she was capable, so much more capable than what she had previously thought. And we actually just had our last session at the end of January. And it was awesome because she got promoted to vice president and is going to take over this huge role. And in fact, I think her promotion goes into effect this coming Monday, rather. So it's really about integration and just changing someone's psychology. And for her, we didn't need to set an anchor. It was just her understanding that by separating herself or dividing herself in two, she was taking some of her best talents or traits and keeping them outside the office. And as a result, she was trying to look to sort of complete herself by seeking validation from her boss instead of having that internal validation that she can do this all on her own. And when she made that shift, her career has taken off. So it's been really a really beautiful story.
It's really inspiring to hear that how these techniques can make a difference even in the most demanding situations, and it really shows the versatility and the power of this approach. Now, let's, yeah, please continue.
Oh, I was just going to say it's really beautiful because you realize that a lot of times the thing that stops us is we don't we create beliefs that limit us, and
Hmm.
the power of a belief is so pervasive because it it really defines what your view of the world is. And sometimes it's hard to get out of our own view of the world until we force ourselves to say, okay, I want to see a bigger version or a different version of the world than I've been seeing. And when that happens, people have breakthroughs. And it's so awesome as a coach to see someone have a breakthrough because you realize they are making another step and progress on their journey. And it's so exciting to see. So, yep.
I completely agree. Now, let's talk about the spiritual aspect. So, how does finding inner peace through nervous system regulation align with one's spiritual journey?
It's very much the same thing. And what I find, particularly here in the West, I live in the United States, and in the West, we're very good at the science of achievement, right? Especially in the United States, we build so many things. We're a relatively small country, 350 million people, and yet we have the world's largest economy. And it's
Mhm.
driven by this kind of relentless pursuit of innovation and drive and desire. And that's great. What we're lacking to a great extent is the inner journey, like the courage to go on the inner journey. And I got out of the Marines. When I was a Marine Corps officer, I got out in 2006. And I don't know before then I could have told you what a yoga studio even was because it was something I had never seen before. Or if I had seen it, it wasn't visible to me or I wasn't conscious to it. And I took my first yoga class the weekend I got out, and it was a gentle style yoga. So I was like, I lift weights and maybe this will help me stretch. And 2 days later, I went to a different class. It was a different style instructor. And I was blown away by just how intense it was. I was dripping in sweat from just moving my body. It didn't make sense to me. And what ended up happening was when I went into Shavasana or the corpse pose at the very end of class, like I had this moment of stillness. And it was something that I'd always wanted and searched for. And I realized, oh, I want that in my life. I want more of that. And so I became a yoga instructor. Well, as you go on the yoga journey, what I heard from different teachers over and over again was you're not your mind, you're not your body, you're the awareness behind those things. And in the Judeo Christian Western kind of construct, even though a soul is talked about, it's not really discussed in terms of how do you bring it to consciousness? How do you make it alive? And through the power of incantations and rewiring your nervous system, the whole premise when you really kind of get into the idea of understanding what it means to be divine or understanding divinity is the greatest challenge in Western civilization to a large extent is the predilection to assign God outside ourselves. Like we externalize God. And if you look at Jesus's teachings was really, no, the kingdom of God is within you. So if that's true, how do you start to bring that kingdom to life? And through my journey as a yoga instructor, I got into quantum physics. And that's kind of a strange transition to make, but quantum physics is the world of the unseen. It's the world of energy, frequency, and vibration, where you start to see everything's connected. It's not the physical separation of the Newtonian model of reality. Everything's connected. And as you start to realize that, you start to realize, well, if everything's connected, then there must be kind of a greater consciousness that we're all assigned to, or we all contribute to or are part of. And so as you go on that journey, you then realize if there's a kingdom within me, if there's a identity that I want to bring to life, I need to do that through conscious awareness. And that is the power for me of incantations. And that's why I do my morning incantations routine, because it's always about, let me bring this identity into being. Let me awaken to more of who I am so that I can contribute and serve others in a more meaningful capacity. And so it's really just, I mean, it still comes back to incantations, and they can be, I am spiritual, I am love, I am abundance, whatever is going to light someone up or excite you, make those your incantations and do it with emotion, because the more emotion you do, the more that becomes an emotional state that you're going to inhabit all the time. And you realize, when you start to realize that there is an internal king or queen inside you that you get to awaken and discover, then you become greater than the world outside. You stop being dominated by the news headlines of crisis media, or you're not overwhelmed by social media. You realize that it's all information, and you can rise above the information through the integrity of your own individuation.
The integration of spirituality and science is such a profound topic, and it's really wonderful to see how the strict practices can lead to, such a deeper sense of purpose and fulfillment.
It really is. I mean, it's really, and historically, especially again in the West, science and religion haven't played really well together, which is why
Mhm.
there's such a preference for so many people to kind of go down the spiritual path, because religion is often so dogmatic and so structured. And yet when you get into the science of it, you see that there's certainly a greater awareness of consciousness. And that then leads you to this state of transcendence. And you realize that there is a connection between spirituality and science, and it's within you. And so as you awaken that, you start to see that it's within everyone else too.
That completely makes sense. Thank you so much, David, for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today. Your unique blend of neuroscience, biblical wisdom, and practical leadership strategies is truly inspiring. And to all our listeners, remember that finding inner peace is a journey that involves both our mind and body. So embrace the power of rewiring the nervous system, integrate these practices into your daily life, and explore the deeper connections to spiritual well-being. And if you're looking for more guidance, be sure to check out David's work and his best-selling book. Thank you for tuning into Inner Peace Better Health. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Let's continue this journey towards better health and inner peace together. Until next time, stay healthy and stay inspired.